Hello everyone, it's another quick art talk time, and today we got a pretty big guest, pretty good guys, pretty nice guys, and beautiful faces that we cannot really see right now because we all have no cameras. But we are so happy to have Brainstorm founders, Brainstorm School, that was of course one of our biggest inspiration to start off Focal Point. So welcome John Park and James Paick. It's me, Darek Zabrodsky, and Mikhail Kuz here. So hello everyone, hello guys, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
All good, man. Good to have you guys. We had like a very quick warm up before the session, but we are just so happy to have you here. And of course, the most important thing is just to hear as much from you. So yeah, just tell us how it's going, guys. How is school? We know that John just wrapped up some of the classes today. So yeah, the voice is on you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us. Yeah, it's going pretty well. James and I were busy with Brainstorm and getting next semester ready. Just making sure we do a lot of the upkeep, and yeah, just kind of the everyday kind of deal where we're making sure that the students are in good hands and ensuring that their educational quality is is up to date and that the information is being well received. So yeah, it's been going really well. It's busy, but it's going good.
Awesome.
How is because obviously you guys have been doing Brainstorm for how many years now?
Gosh, close to 5 or 6 years maybe.
6 years.
Yeah.
And what I remember, it started off as a, and I even like did like I remember like Brainstorm started as like a weekly brainstorm thingy on a Facebook group, right?
Yeah, there was a challenge group.
Yeah. And even I participated. Like I remember those days. Like I was very excited, like that something like that got into action.
Yeah.
And starting from the bottom, now you guys here. Fuck.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because John and I, had this push this idea of having that Brainstorm group, and it kind of stumbled into the idea of talking about offering some education. I don't think our first real big sort of goal was to make like a full-on school, but
yeah, no way.
It kind of just like really stumbled from just like a little seed that we planted, and we're like, hey, that's kind of fun. We got a good response out of it, and it sort of organically grew,
Yeah. I mean, because
was it more of a lucky accident, or did you guys always knew that you have passion for education, or a little bit of both, or?
I think James and I we've always been involved in teaching, and we were seeing a lot of students who had design questions, and we were like, you know what, why don't we just start a thread where we can just share some basic design philosophies that we both practice in the real world, you know, and maybe this can help people kind of understand, like, hey, this is what it means to problem solve. This is what it means to design. We never really had the idea of like, hey James, let's like start a school and let's just get this now.
Yeah, beautiful. Because with Tom Brillante, he guys is helping you out with the expansion of the whole operation, right?
Yeah, so Thomas is great. He's been helped with just like one or a few classes that's just really affordable. We started to kind of stumble upon these other things and these other questions that students had about how the industry works and how concept art is actually needed in the industry.
Visually develop, design, illustrate. What is maybe one of the main misguidances or misdirections? Like,
all right, if I can chime in on this part.
Absolutely.
This is very it's like it like really bothers me even till this day, because when I was a student, we're sold a dream, right? to create amazing creative things, and it's still a big goal, and it's still a part of the passion to be creative. But then the big misguidance is that not really understanding how the industry works, I think, is a huge problem with artists that are starting out, and they have this idea, this perception of what it means to be an artist. They don't know what it means to be an artist. So there's
artist or concept artist in specific?
Sorry, concept artists.
Yeah.
They don't really understand like what it takes and what it means to be a concept artist. But like, what is your day-to-day job, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not clearly represented on ArtStation or CG Hub, or whatever these other platforms that are out there. It's not. It's not like what you see online is not what you're going to be doing on the job every single day.
Yeah.
That is the biggest misconception. And for James and I, like, that's kind of one of the biggest things that propelled me to. I learned it through James. I learned it through on the job. I learned it through work. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if okay, are we just?
Yeah, we are recording right now, so let's continue we just compile it. But sorry for that.
Well, on the subject of what John was talking about you know, a lot of the skill that's needed, particularly for me, I kind of see it on two different platforms. One is on the education side, and one from the sort of a viewpoint of someone who operates a small studio, you know, and what's the work that's actually needed kind of in that basis. And there's a particular type of student that I would encounter every once in a while that has like a very misguided understanding about what they're going to be doing, you know?
Yes.
And they kind of come in and saying they want to be able to sort of revolutionize the way storytelling is being done, and there's very vast, huge types of things that they're trying to accomplish, which I think can be done maybe, you know, in big future goals, but to kind of realistically understand what they're going to be doing right out of school, you know, I think is a huge thing that can benefit students as they're preparing their portfolio, so they're not kind of overshooting or overdeveloping areas that aren't necessarily going to appeal to an art director or someone that's reviewing their work for a job review, you know? Yeah.
So when you say when they're coming out right of school, and I don't want to shit on any school, but then do you think that there is like a general mistake how schools then prepare these students if they're kind of not telling them how it is in the real industry? Is it because they just teach the core skills, that's it? They don't talk about, you know, how important communication is, for example? Because I know for experience, art directors do their job, and sometimes they do it with a lot of cold blood. They don't care about, you know, how you feel about things. They will just say how shitty it is, and this is what you have to do. When it's good, they don't say anything sometimes. So is that one of the things, or?
I think if you go to like an institution like Art Center or Cal Arts or any of these other major private schools, you know, you're getting a lot of people who come in with a lot of passion but very little foundation experience, and I think the school's goal is to kind of help prepare the foundation skills. But it's when it kind of goes into that translation, when they start to build a portfolio to get a job, that's where it gets a little bit lost in translation. It's not quite one-to-one with what the studios quite need. And so that conversation is what needs to happen a lot more, is what do the studios need? What are you expected to do on the day basis? You know, as a junior concept artist, you know, what do you do on a video game job? You know, like how's your day spent 90% of the time? Also, if you're working in a film job and you're getting in, like what are the expectations, and what are you going to be assigned or tasked with? You know, I think those are some of the things that I didn't really see you know, really answered by a lot of schools. Yes. And it's something that, you know, it's challenging, you know, like there's so much to cover, but I think that's that is something that needs to happen.
Do you get
So-
also this sort of like a feeling that sometimes the teachers in our schools don't really share everything with you because they are afraid of, because they don't really want people who are learning to get the whole knowledge on that? Because I'm not particularly pointing out at any school, but I have experience with just a regular fine art school, then the teachers, they were sort of like securing their market. They were like 45 50 plus years old, and they already didn't want to like just sort of like adapt to what's going on in the modern market, in today's market. So they sort of like just they taught things that are sort of like obvious, but in a way that you have to do it this way because I do it this way, and you
Right.
want and you got this impression that they wanted to tell you that I'm gonna teach you that, but you won't be original or you won't really succeed. It's sort of like that. I might not really see in our digital art school, but I don't also have like much experience with that. That's why I'm asking, because I know you, John, were in art center, right? You have
Yeah,
this experience from inside as an
both-
insider.
Yeah, both James and I. We
Oh,
both
sorry.
went
So
to
you
Art
both.
Center.
Okay.
No, but to kind of to your point, I don't think it's necessary that they're withholding any information, but it's
Mhm.
more about, the industry changes like rapidly. Every 10 years, there's either a new program that's going to completely flip the process on its head, right? But I think you get a lot of instructors who really give back and they genuinely are passionate about teaching, but when they are teaching and they aren't working, their emphasis and their knowledge is more, it starts getting a little bit outdated.
Yeah, like the relatability to the
Mhm.
updated standards of what is going on in industry starts to fade, right?
Yeah, it starts to fade. I mean, their intentions are good, and I think the principles of what they teach are incredibly valuable.
Mhm.
But there are just some things about in regards to the pipeline. You're not going to be using marker and pencil anymore.
Mhm.
You might need to use Photoshop, and the art director who's of this generation, they might expect a certain amount of turnaround time, a certain revision, a certain set of designs that need to be conveyed and explored. And if those things aren't taught at art school, then you don't really know what's going on. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so
Yeah,
I think
that's
it's a mixture of that.
There's
Yeah.
probably a big percentage of students that are technically very at a professional level already, but their understanding of how and the way the industry works is, it's not really there. So they're not able to really present themselves as like a proper type of candidate. They're, even though they have a lot of foundational skills where maybe some students won't even see foundation drawing as portfolio worthy, but in a lot of cases that's what junior level artists get hired for most specifically. They're not going to get hired
Exactly.
to do
Crazy alien ship designs, right?
yeah, or crazy like Jamie Jones level illustration paintings, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Even though they aspire to get there, which is I think everyone should,
Yeah.
they're not going to get hired for that at first, but they can one day be groomed to get to that level. So when they have that realistic expectation of, all right, as a junior, you're probably going to get asked to draw the same water bottle about 15 times,
Mhm. The
and
same.
it's not going to be it's not going to be glamorous, and it's not going to be anything that's you're going to really wow over, but you're going to slowly earn the respect, and you're going to slowly earn the reputation of being an artist that understands the pipeline.
There you go, guys. It's like in the mafia. Nice.
and that's one of the things that happens once you start to work is, yeah, your technical level is very important, but it's also the understanding of, okay, now you're part of this bigger system. What do you offer to that process of now game making or filmmaking? And as you gain more respect, you'll get more responsibilities. You'll get, asked to do bigger designs. more thorough paintings, and then you get to the really big stuff. So, that's something.
I think it is really
So-
nice
so-
what you said, being part, because what we also emphasize on is, let's be honest, we are all artists. We like to show off, stuff that's in the end, we love I personally love the reaction from the audience. I really like it, The main reason why I do it is because, well, I just love for myself, but when you get reactions from friends, family, that's nice. But it's very dangerous maybe to let aspiring concept artists know that working professionally, that it's nothing, that you have to put your ego aside. You're really part of a project, When it's just concept art, it just stops with a pretty picture. But it needs to be communicative and inspiring enough so that the modeler really wants to model it, so that the animator wants to animate it, et cetera, right?
I think it's one of the simplest misconceptions, because when people, head over to ArtStation, or they just scroll through some of their favorite artists, Facebook or Instagram, they basically see the sort of final output that James and John mentioned before, that they don't really get the vibe of how it looks behind the scenes. And that's why we also recommend sometimes people to take opportunity to work in the studio if they have a chance, because then they will learn the pipeline from behind the scenes, and they know all the steps that guides you towards doing nice and funny stuff. But first you have to go through the pain, right? So no pain, no gain, basically.
Yeah.
That's true.
In that case, John and I, we get to look at a lot of portfolios, and anything from a random email to someone kind of putting something in our face as we're walking by in a convention or something. But we get to see a lot of different portfolios, and one of the things that I've started to accommodate as a process is just this very basic checklist of very basic foundational rules, and every level you go higher. Basically, it's like a game. It's like the Tower of Death or something,
Yeah.
But when students or artists give me a portfolio and they're asking me to look at it, and they're like, yeah, I really want to get a job soon, and you're not getting past level 1, which is basic foundation, perspective errors, if you're not getting past that basic level 1, then your goal right now is not to be thinking about getting a job. It's purely to be setting up just how to learn, creating that platform for yourself to maximize what you can learn in that specific amount of time that they have, rather than trying to shoot for a home run when their foundational skills are off,
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's something that
this is also sort of that we were discussing before our recorded session, when we were talking about people who, for instance, had hard times showing, for instance, lighting scenarios, and John was showing some of the examples. I hope he can bring them back again, but I think it's really important that those basics that they sort of lack, or they just avoid to learn, are resolved by 3D packages, for instance, right? And of course, we all use 3D packages, because these days, in many cases, or in many briefs, you are, for instance, provided with some 3D blockouts. So there is of course, obvious thing that you just take some of the blockouts and render them in 3D, or with usage of render engine. But people who just go from that way and they lack of fundamentals have hard time to pick up other tools, and sometimes maybe it's gonna be more accessible if they can just scrap something in 2D very quickly, or if they have to sketch something, or if they have to compose something. But if they always use those fancy tools that are for more advanced levels, they got hard time doing something that's original, that has the right proportions, right scale, right balance, basically, right? And it's all that design is about, basically, right? So
yeah, I mean, we come across some funny stuff once in a while,
Define funny.
Well, I don't know if there's an understanding sometimes about like the level of a technique and what level you need to be to actually learn this specific technique. You know, because there's so many things that are out there floating around on, you know, Gumroads and tutorials and YouTubes that every technique is available for you, you know? Like
Yes.
even the death techniques are like wide open to the public, you know? So it's I kind of see this miseducation, this kind of misguidedness at times where maybe I'll get a student that'll say like, "Oh, I couldn't draw this object, I couldn't draw this design, so I decided to photo bash the design." And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
And it
at
still
all,
looks
you
like
know?
shit.
Yeah, like that. I mean, you can't. That thought process of using that as like a solution to kind of do something like that, I believe, is so misguided at times. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we live in a generation where it's all about trying to find shortcuts and the most fastest route there.
Right.
My big question to that is, have you met anyone successful person that has gotten there through shortcuts? And the answer to that is no. You know,
Yeah.
they've done it through trial and error, and they had to take the long road because you try to find shortcuts and you just keep falling on your face, and you have to get back up, and you got to do it the right way if you want to succeed.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more. But I have to be honest. I know some people that are already concept artists in the industry, and they said like, yeah, I always photo bash, But I think there is also a beauty behind this whole industry that our way is maybe proven. I think let's be honest, James, John, me, Derek, we have an all different way of teaching. I mean, not even the fact that John and James alone have way more experience. But, it doesn't mean that we are also 100% right, because I have seen people doing also amazing stuff only with photo bash, and they started with photo bashes. However, this is just not my way. Like, I would never teach my students that way because I still see the flaws. I still see that their lighting is not on point. I still see that they are limited with what they do with only photos. It works for what they're doing, for the project that they're asked for. But for me personally, it wouldn't work. In most cases, I think, John, you're right.
In a way,
people fall
Miko.
out their faces all the time if they don't abide to the fundamentals.
In a way, Miko, it also is according to not only the technique, because we are so focused right now on the technique, but also on the subject that people pick up to do their stuff. You have the guy that, for instance, does only guns. You have the guy that does only mechs. You have the guy that does just landscapes, and of course, if they find a way to do it, in a way that you can sort of like skip the fundamentals, and it looks good and it's believable to the client, it's fine. But in a way, those people always sort of like cut short on the way that the range of their work is being very limited to specific things, either to technique or to subject, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And I think we are opposite to that. So
Yeah, it also kind of works, for certain people, as they might have a job at a studio that is kind of very specific task oriented, using a specific software, doing sort of a routine sort of a design job in game or in film. That's sort of like creating maybe certain types of 3D assets used in an environment or whatnot, Whereas other people who have a different type of job scenario, maybe they freelance more, their skill sets have to be a lot wider, because they have to now accommodate for the different types of art directors or projects.
But in the end of the day, I think it also fits to some personalities, because I myself, I don't see myself just being rooted to one project at all. Just one project that requires doing this or that. I would just shoot myself in the face, basically, because I would feel so stagnant. I would feel so bored after a while. Even though the project might look as the best project ever at the first glance, after a while you just need a new boost, new energy, right? So I rather I just speak for myself right now, but it might also fits you. I think it's the more versatile you are, the more you keep up with learning new stuff, and at the same time you got enjoyed the process much more throughout the years, and you don't really feel this sort of like burnout effect, right? That's at least what works for me. I know you guys also work on pretty amazing projects, but they all are different, and it's also like you juggle different projects. Imagine yourself being on just one for like years and years, and you just are obliged to do one thing over and over again. I wouldn't really imagine myself doing that, to be honest.
Well, I definitely know people that have done that, who have been at one company, not one project, but one company for over 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that kind of matches certain personality types.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like you, Derek. Like I haven't been at one company for any longer than like 2 years, so
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing too, is gosh, it's funny, you'll hear a lot of people's goals like, oh yeah, I want to work at this company and that's my dream job, and they'll go there first, and there's not this kind of idea of hey, you can kind of navigate through all of this space of working full-time and working freelance and trying these different industries out, because there's so much overlap in what we do as concept artists.
Mm-hmm.
You can work in a lot of different industries and really experiment in growing like your portfolio, your basic footprint as a designer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you think that the majority of your students that come in like have this thing where they tell you, like they show the portfolio, for example, and they always aim for one specific company? Does it happen often?
I would say like a lot of students, they do have like their top 3 favorite studios.
Right.
But their biggest concern is, they want to get a job.
Yeah.
Right. And
so I'm sorry, but so if they have that top 3, how is your reaction? Do you advise to like, okay, if that is your goal, that is your dream, go after the company, or do you then advise them like, okay, maybe keep it for now as a secondary plan, but focus first on these things before you sub-focus on the specific elements of what that company requires?
So, like let's say if I have like students that want to go work at Naughty Dog or Sony Santa Monica, which is more realistic.
Yeah.
But let's say their skill level isn't quite there.
Mm-hmm.
But their portfolio and their style has to match that flavor, right?
Yes.
So even if they don't get into that studio, then at least they can get into a studio that has similar taste or a similar level of products. So that way they don't have to settle on like, well, I can't get in there, so I'm gonna go work at a mobile game studio, Because I think that starts to deviate a little too much from their main goal. And I think that's the one thing that I would always advise my students, is like, have these goals in mind. You're not gonna get into these companies straight out of the gate, but you want to work towards those companies. So learn the right things, but basically cater your portfolio so that it matches that sensibility,
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I would advise. And also another thing is like seeing too many portfolios that are way too generalized is not a good thing, because
generalized in what way? Like how,
like you'll get like a portfolio where someone wants to do characters, creatures, vehicles, props, mechs, guns, environments, keyframe.
Right.
It starts kind of getting all over the place, where if you look at them as kind of like a restaurant, they're kind of like a buffet. Like they just do everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't do everything really well. They kind of just do everything on an average, below average level, And that's kind of a problem if you want to get into a studio that expects excellence,
Yes.
And if you're going to do that, then you have to put your best foot forward and really focus in on like 1 or 2 things, but do it really, really well.
Yeah. So still being versatile, but at the same time have your own like we call it in Poland, like have your own horse that they're just gonna speak for your skills, right? So maybe you are just aiming to to do free for other things, but maybe the characters is your thing, or maybe the environment is your thing, and let's make it shiny and presentable the most. Even though you can still, on some pages in your portfolio blanket, you can just scroll through and show your client or potential client that, oh, I can do this and that as well. And he said that, okay, here are the things, and you might just, level up in those things, but you can also, stop other things as well at the same time, right? Even though this is the stuff that you do the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think like you kind of have to look at it like this, like if you're assembling a team together, right? Of whether it's artists or a team of sports athletes, you're gonna remember them, you're gonna know them and remember them for like kind of what they're best at, their superpower.
Yes.
Granted, we can all do everything, but there's this one particular area of strength that you're gonna really shine in. Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing to really express and show in your portfolio, because it's gonna really speak truth to what you're passionate about, but also it's gonna make it's gonna make your portfolio really stand out from anyone else who's just doing a more generalized portfolio. Yeah.
Very, very good points. I think I'm a little bit in between. I saw the strength when I was starting out, when I tried to be versatile, but I think looking back, my 70% focus was mechs and hardware, but that 30% was always, but I don't want to risk all my cards only in that. I'm going to do also a little bit of environments, props, even tried some characters.
Yeah,
that's
interesting, Mikhail, because when I first heard about you, the first thing that stood out was, wow, this guy can draw any hard surface vehicle.
Wow, thanks.
There's honestly, there was very few people that I feel like could do it to your level. But that's kind of
do it. John can. I was like, John was also like, it was a time when I just saw mechs after mechs coming out from him. So, yeah.
No, I was like the mech guy, but like going back to that point is that like even though you had passion and interest in other areas, I was able to kind of pinpoint out your body of work from the masses, and I was able to go like, okay, that's Mikhail's work, like that. I know exactly what I'm looking at. I know whose work this is, and like that's the first thing that stands out. You know what I mean? Just like Derek's, like, he does these beautiful keyframe environments. Yeah. And it has a certain sensibility to light. Like that has a very strong impression. And like if you're a studio and you're hiring and you look at these portfolios and you start to kind of get familiar with their body of work, those are the things that are going to last. Those are the last impressions. So, yeah.
So guys, how to impress a company? It's all about versatility, but also specializing one thing. And could we like agree that in the end, just say the most cliche thing and just follow what your heart desires the most and get good at it? Because I am like really always like I always think there is more to it, because in the end, even though I live my dream job, it's like you guys said, it's not always a dream. Sometimes I see it just like work. I have to crunch through variations, through feedback rounds.
Yeah.
Right.
And it got kind of like a pain in the ass, but in the end of the day, it's like, we cannot really complain, I guess, and we do what we basically like. When I was just like a small kid, I didn't even know there is a thing like concept art at all, and it was just sort of like accidentally for me that I found out about all those all this huge industry, because now it's of course growing and growing every year. But when I was starting out, like 7-8 years ago, and I was doing just some regular small cardboard games, illustrations, and I thought it's like a pinnacle. But I still felt like, of course, I want to do something more, but I didn't even know there's a profession like that. So where you guys were already in the industry, I was only dreaming about it. So So this is the thing that and today people, as you guys mentioned before, all of you mentioned before, we have as accessibility to access to like all different techniques or tutorials or or resources. And to be honest, even though it might look like it's easier to pick up specific subject or specific skill, it's also too much more overwhelming than it used to be like 5 or 10 years ago, because now it's basically just spread across, and a lot of art friends are doing tutorials right now. They are all teaching, and people who are just entering this world are being really buzzed and overwhelmed because they are kind of bombarded with the knowledge from all different sides, and sometimes it might be hard to really focus on what you want to do, basically, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about just structure, and I think that's the hardest thing is when you have like so much amazing resource, and there's so much good stuff out there, but I think I think going to some sort of school or having a mentor or having an instructor that's going along with your art journey, it's important that there is some sort of structure to help guide the learning process. Otherwise, I would never pick up a pencil and want to do perspective. Like that's the most boring subject in the world, but that structure really allows you to kind of go through this regiment, and then later on you understand the reasons why. So I think structure is a key component.
Yeah. We also know some students who kind of unfortunately weren't able to follow a certain structure, and they kind of spent their time choosing classes more based on, oh, this looks really fun or that looks really attractive.
Yes.
And they end up spending way more time kind of chasing the education rather than following something that's a little bit more formatted for them. And that would actually help a lot more people get to their desired goal kind of like a lot faster.
So do you guys also advise them what classes to take? If you like note that, let's say a student is like, oh, that sounds fun, oh, let's do this. Do you guys advise them, or you guys only advise them when they ask for it?
So
do you guys let them like, okay, it's your freedom, you do what you think is the best for you, take it?
Well, more or less, we kind of have two basic types of students. One is an actual student trying to get their education through the program, and another is just trying to fulfill certain types of techniques, learning a la carte, basically, that type of student as well. But when it comes to the student that's looking for the more fulfilled education, we do give out and offer recommendations, and we used to kind of host recommendation nights and things like that. But those probably are, people who are piecing together education on a really, on a really good budget. You know what I mean? Taking classes from different types of schools, which I think is a really awesome way to do it. But if they want any type of guidance from us, they can definitely just email us directly at info@brainstormschool.com, and we can give them recommendations from where should they start, are they working and doing educational part-time, then we can also forecast, these are the sort of the classes you'd want to take, and how many terms that would take you, and so on and so forth. Nice. Because one of the things that John and I really try to do is we try to, I'm sorry to say, but there's so much crap out there that
there is
a lot of students come in and they don't even know how to ask the right questions because their filter is like so full of this weird stuff that they hear online,
What would be an example of like a weird thing from what they hear online?
Like the idea is, and I think with a lot of the students, is that they have to be a certain type of a painter, illustrator, keyframe artist in order to like even just get a job,
Yeah.
And for some students that we have, like getting a job is their absolute like most time precious thing. Like they need to get it as soon as possible. So we let them know, like, no, you should just focus on drawing, for example, be a better draftsman, learn better design, and
Yes.
get in that direction, which is a lot more plausible, without trying to hit like this like crazy exceptional illustrator level.
So in the end of the day, it's still the thing that I think we sort of like covered is like being bombed with like too many different opinions, and in the end of the day, you end up scrolling through like ArtStation or whatever website for artists, and you see all those beautiful work, all those beautiful like final illustrations with all the designs, but the people don't really post like behind the scenes. People don't really post like how do they come up with those structures or those designs separately, even on the like a prop microscopic level of detail, when they sort of like maybe break it down all into pieces and then just collect it all to create like a final, for instance, level design or final I don't know, like mech. First they build like pieces, for instance, maybe, and then they will just collect all those things, and people just see the final output. When everything is going on, there's like ships flying over, those mechs are shooting each other. Those things needs to be thought through or discussed or designed beforehand, right?
I think I'm honestly guilty of this. Is that I post on social media because
I think we all are.
You're right. It's like I want those likes, man.
Man, that's true, man. That's true. Like we don't even hide it.
Joking aside, it's like I use social media to just share what I want to do on my off time. Mm-hmm. It doesn't represent what I do professionally at all.
Exactly.
And the caveat to that is that there's a lot of students that will look up to you. Mm-hmm. They'll look at your work and they will believe that that is what you do professionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's where I think we're all very we need to take a bit more responsibility, but
only post the boring concept art for
exactly right. Like
introduction.
How many likes are you gonna get for posting an orthographic view or posting variations of architecture on this one building?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I think it's very precious what we are talking about. So people who will be listening, because we fuck up the live stream, so sorry on my side. But the people who will be watching this, I think it's very precious information, because we sort of like we don't really want to destroy that sort of like a dream or destroy sort of like an image of that we don't do this stuff at all, because it's more like a lucrative part of the project when you are able to do those things, right? But they don't see, as John said, they don't see those little steps, those little ugly thumbnails, those little drawings, and even on napkins, on paper, whatever. Sometimes you just are in a call with our director or your producer, and you just scribble something on the paper, and this might end up being like a very interesting design, but it doesn't represent your final illustration or your final output, and that's what people usually see.
Yeah.
Sometimes what we also kind of have to think about at times as we work professionally is that you're just trying to problem solve what people have a hard time communicating over to you.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to understand what a director wants, but I think one of the things that's really important that I've learned after years of working now is, if I was a student now, I would really try to be concentrating on what are the right questions I should be asking in order to become an effective designer. Like understanding that process is, and this kind of goes back again to having so much information readily available out there, is that I see a lot of students don't have a process that is personal, a process that allows them to discover what they need to be paying attention to, like what is their goal, how do they process problem solving as a concept designer, but rather what I see nowadays is like a little bit of a process that belongs to everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not really able to answer these in-depth conceptual questions, when they come to a class that's a little bit more like an advanced concept design class or something like that,
Yeah. Very good point.
That's what I think is important, man, is learn to know what questions to ask as a student, because when you're going to work, that's all you're doing you're trying to find the questions, or you're actually trying to discover what questions to even ask certain directors, certain art directors, certain leads.
Yes.
Man, sometimes you're going to work with people who can't really communicate well.
Yeah, exactly.
So dear people, if you're ready to join Brainstorm School or any school, that's right. I think that's what I wanted to get into eventually. Ask the right questions, because all the instructors, no matter how experienced they are, no matter if you look at the track record of both James Paick, John Park, it's just ridiculous. But they will never know what your personal obstacles are. And knowing them, thinking about them, just, I don't know, even fucking meditate about it. But ask those right questions, because I get those too. And then it's like, that's right, I never even thought about it. Why is, for example, my drawing coordination skill better as experienced concept artist than you, right? Like, what did I have to go through? Sometimes we try to explain things, but knowing things and explaining them there is a big difference between that, and everyone is different. So we cannot, when we explain in a class in front of them collectively, that sometimes, of course, doesn't get absorbed by everyone on the same level as we might wish to. But if everyone starts asking good questions that are pinpointed specifically to your needs, that's always good. That's always good.
Yeah, I think the very first step, it should be actually don't be afraid to ask questions at all, because when we are artists, and a lot of people, especially in the beginning, because of course it's like with everything in life, your confidence might grow or might not grow or be stagnant. But looking at myself, for instance, when I was starting out, I was just kind of shy, like just kind of timid and like just quiet, and just wanted to ask specific question, but I didn't know what I really need to ask in order to get a question. And until you understand that you have to ask whatever, because it might just open your brain on specific things, because we touch upon specific subject, and all of us, even though we agree on all points, we all have different things to say. And if you don't ask the question, how are you gonna get to know like what you should do in this industry, or how should you start, or how you should get, for instance, paid? Because I think this is another topic that's really important, and so many people sort of like don't really spread this information. And I think rather it's important to spread that information, because then the people who enter the industry will not pull it down in terms of, for instance, rates. They will just keep it on the same level, or we might actually work or fight for like a higher rate. Because I think if you have the project that's like heavily based on the concept design, who the hell is in charge of like of designing that, and who the hell is in charge of like how the project is being perceived by normal people that are not really art related? Of course, artists, right? In a lot of cases, because you have producers, you have directors, but the artists are those hands that will show someone else's ideas, or they bring their own ideas and build this visual appearance to the audience, right? And people who are starting out, they should be aware of that. They should value themselves. Of course, it takes time. It takes a lot of years, pain, fuck ups, level ups, whatever. But at the time and at specific point, you will see that you have to, start valuing yourself, because then you keep the market, keep the industry on a proper level. Because I see loads of students, and I talk to them during the classes, even when they message me, and when I just say, when I just tell them, when they ask, for instance, oh, I got this first job and this is pretty big already project, can you tell me like how should I charge? And if they tell me that, oh, like $200 per day for them is like huge money, it's like, holy shit, man, really? It's like it shows that they are uneducated, basically, right? It's not
right.
They should be afraid of that. We shouldn't really be afraid of even hiding that, I guess, because there's always a range. Someone like Craig Mullins will always take more than some guy that has like 1 year experience, right? Of course, but at least knowing the range of rates, it will definitely help keep the sustainability to the whole industry. And since there is like more and more people, it's like thousands of newcomers every year coming to the industry. They have to be educated, and this is actually, I think, partly our mission to do that, right?
Yep.
I agree with you, but with that said, I'm gonna take off, guys. But really awesome having this chat with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining in, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks
man.
so much, James.
And hopefully,
See you guys soon.
awesome, man. Bye bye.
Take care.
Speak soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting us, you guys.
Absolutely, man. I hope we can do it more often. If you guys are available, and if you just wanna hop by, we can just do those streams, or whatever. Just good sort of like way of like keeping up in touch. Since we missed each other last year.
Yeah.
But I think it's always great to chat with our friends, and share the experience, and get to know what you guys are up to, how is life, how is work, and that's awesome.
Yeah, let's definitely link up again. I think doing these will really not only help each other communicate to the community, but also for anyone who's curious about concept art. I think this would be a really good insight about what to keep in mind, what to be aware of.
Absolutely.
So I think it's our responsibility, as educators. Like Focal Point and Brainstorm School is, I think we should look at this and really inform people. So thank you for putting this together, man.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, thank you too. It was amazing to have, like I said, two titans here available that we both looked up for throughout the years. I personally have way more questions, but yeah, let's wrap this up. We always try to keep it on.
Yeah, let's keep it for the next time. Let's keep it for the next time. And,
Let's do it.
And awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you very much. And yeah, for those who were watching us, see you soon. We're gonna get another guests. We're gonna get another sessions. So hopefully we can be in touch, and hopefully we can grab Brainstorm folks again on the stream. So thank you very much for everyone joining.
We'll put the links of all the information about Brainstorm School as well in the description, right?
Absolutely,
so everything is clear. If they want to interested also for your mentorships. Also, John, if we missed something, let us know, and we put the links right in there to your social media.
Thank you so
everything.
much. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you very much. Thank
Me
you, man.
too.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye bye.
See you guys.
Bye bye.